formal because I really want this to be, like an open sort of forum. If people have any questions, to address those questions, just because there's already, some guiding documentation and things that go along with this. So hopefully, if you read through that, it's pretty clear the general gist, but then we'll also be reviewing things and we'll be looking for some of your feedback towards the end as far as, next directions to take with the project. Yeah, so we'll just hop into it. I've got, a couple slides just to guide us here, and then we will jump into the dashboard after the slides just to demonstrate, its functionality. So yeah, I'm going to start sharing my screen now. So CDP Rental Housing Affordability Dashboard Project, providing timely insights into affordability by analyzing online rental listings. So the big idea with this, sorry, these are the topics we'll be hitting. We'll jump right into the project history and overview. So the big idea with this project is trying to overcome the shortcomings of the more traditional data sources. So that's going to be things like the Census and CMHC, because each of those sort of has their own shortcomings. So with the Census, that would be, the long release cycle, the fact that the housing data comes out something like 18 months after the reference date. So, by the time it's actually in our hands to analyze, it's already quite an old time point. It's a very, very strong time point because it's so the coverage is, so incredible. It's the census, but it is always very delayed. And then with the CMHC, they're only looking at things like purpose-built rentals, which really misses, the secondary market. And it's typically the secondary market, I think, that, struggles the most with rentals because they're not in, just as formal of a situation. So it's really about overcoming those shortcomings. And this project has been, sort of in the ideation phase for a few years now. I met Michelle with his other company, Creative Neighborhoods Incorporated, who does, nonprofit work in Ottawa. And we are working on a project based solely in Ontario, looking at, a whole myriad of different indicators. And one of those happened to be housing. And we actually ran into a group from a college who was collecting these listings, but they were using student volunteers, and it was, like a massive, massive undertaking for them. So we led up a project there with automating collection just for Kijiji within Ontario, and then we thought, this would be great to extend nationally, to extend to more sources, hopefully, because there's just a big need for that sort of work. Michelle, I don't know if you want to add in anything here.
Just to add to that, actually, I would say this project, the early genesis was where we love our project to start, which was a question from a member in rural New Brunswick. And his question revolved around the struggles he had trying to understand anything to do about rental housing in his community. And essentially, he did have the census, but at that point, it was not just out of date, but it didn't talk about the experience of a renter looking for something that was available, because by definition, the census speaks to the rental situation of occupied units. So it doesn't give us rents of units that are on the market. So it was that frustration. CMHC coverage was non-existent for his part of New Brunswick. And that was where the seed was planted, was what can we do to respond to the rural New Brunswicks of our members across Canada and fill that gap. So this project has been a few years in the making, but that's where I guess in my mind it all started. But I'll hand back to you, August.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Yeah, that's a really important distinction that Michelle noted there. There really isn't any source for, actual asking rents, like the reality that someone in a housing shortage, would be facing. They would be facing the asking rents, not these established rents of, tenants who have been there for who knows how long. So it was really getting at the core of the actual renter, the actual person in need, to help with those sorts of policy decisions and things. So if we hop into the methodology right now, this is tons of words. I mainly just threw all these words on here so that you guys could come back to this later, but then a lot of this is also in the guide. So we've got three sources within the dashboard. We have our public rental listings, we have our Statistics Canada Census, and then we have the CMHC Rental Market Survey. So, the core of it really is the public rental listings, we've been saying, but because the census is, so comprehensive, it is good to have that sort of, very, very strong point just to ground everything in and to compare against, and, as well just to see how things have changed over the 5 years. Similarly with CMHC, even though it is just the primary market, it's still a very strong point of comparison. So that's why those two sets of data are presented alongside the public rental listings, is to sort of allow people to do those comparisons against these well-established data sets to add validity to the public rental listings through comparison sort of deal. So most of this work, pretty much all of this work, has to do with the public rental listings, because as we know, the census data, the CMHC data, it comes pre-cleaned, pre-packaged, pre-aggregated, which is incredible because that stuff is a ton of work. So that's what we see here. Number 2, the data cleaning and standardization. So part of that is the geocoding. So taking these often point level listings and then assigning them to, I believe we have 5 different levels of geography within the dashboard. Removing bad data. So, jokesters, they'll put just anything on the listings website because, it is public data. Anyone can just put whatever they would like. They can put a house for sale in a rental place if they like. They can put a parking spot. They can put, anything. So we do our best to try to remove those things. We also do our best to remove what we deem unrealistic prices. And we came to unrealistic through trial and error and really looking at the raw data to determine, what cutoff point are we still maintaining real listings and what cutoff point are these just, definitely not listings. These are the exact numbers of the cutoff points are within the guide that accompanies both the data set and the dashboard download packages. So the next thing would be the removing duplicate listings. We do our best to remove the duplicate listings, but there's always difficulty when you're using, user-generated unstructured data because, it's hard to answer the question of, is this the exact same place or is this just a place in the same building with, half of a bathroom extra or something? Or is this, a place that has all of the exact same things in the exact same building, same address, same price, same everything, but it is, a different identical unit for rent because, units can be duplicates, like the physical unit could be a duplicate. But we do our best. And then we also believe that, over a large count, the law of large numbers, as you have more and more data points in your sample, the effect of the errors becomes less and less. So to that note, we restrict the results to only be areas with counts of 5, because if it's below 5, then you can have, as I was saying, a couple data points that really skew things like the average or median into just, unrealistic areas. So we chose not to display those just, out of confusion and because they are not as accurate. And then the last big part of this is standardizing variables. So the various websites have, various ways of classing things. So one place might call it a bachelor, another place might call it a studio. One place might, call it a dwelling type, another place might call it a structure type. So it's getting into all these different minutiae of the, underlying structure of these websites and really trying to align the data in a, comprehensive way where it can all be packaged together comparably. And then the last part is, yeah.
There is a question
Sure.
that may be asking. So the question is, I thought the CMHC rental market survey also used asking rents. Can you describe the difference between the survey and the public rental listings? Thanks.
Let me scroll through my notes here because I don't have a note saying this the asking rents. I didn't believe that it was the asking rents. CMHC does do lots of different surveys, so they may have a different survey that has the asking rent. But I'm fairly certain that this rental market survey from their housing market information portal is the actual rents, but please double check the CMHC website. But that's my understanding of that data set. And then the public rental listings and how they're asking rents, it's very much just the same reality that anyone would face when looking at the rental website, right? So if you see that rent being asked, then that is the data that is being collected and brought into the dashboard. And we don't know things like, if they came to some agreement under the table with the landlord where they're actually going to get this rent at, a reduced rate or a heightened rate or whatever. It's hard to get at, the utilities and things that are included, all these different intangible things. So I believe that the rental market survey is just actual paid rents, and then the public listings is the asking rents, right? Yeah, that's my understanding of the CMHC data. So the aggregation is very simple. It's just finding things such as the average rent and median rent. Originally, I was looking at doing a mixture of the three sources and trying to get an average across all three and a median across all three. But because the CMHC data and the census data comes pre-aggregated, it doesn't lend itself well to that. You could do an average, but you wouldn't really be able to do a median. And then also just the fact that there's such diverse sources from such a range of times, it doesn't really make sense to aggregate them all together. Yeah. So now we'll jump into the dashboard. There we go. This looks all right, Sadie?
Yes, that looks good.
Perfect. So this is the welcome page. We'd like to start all of our dashboards off with a welcome page. We start off with a small blurb just explaining, what the dashboard does. This one provides timely insights into the rental housing affordability across Canada by analyzing recent online rental listings. Here are the geographies that we're covering. So we have this national one, Canada, provinces and territories, census division, census subdivision, census metropolitan areas, census agglomerations, and census tracts. So much. We try to always add as much as we possibly can. If there are, additional levels of geography that people are interested in, then please, reach out to us and request that sort of thing. We would love to know, what your data needs are for those various levels of geography. We also just have a note here talking about these information icons. So you'll see when I hover over this, a little tooltip pops up, and there's quite a few of these throughout the dashboard. I try to add just as many as I can so that this data is on hand. Most of the things, actually pretty much all of the things within these are going to be found within the guide as well, but this sort of serves as a place where you can immediately get this information right beside the visuals on the next tabs. We also have here just a version indicator. So this is the version 1 that was last updated June 16th, 2025. We're currently in the works of version 2. And we add this version number to this dashboard set to sort of communicate with you guys that this is version 1. We want to do this sort of continuous improvement. We want your feedback on this sort of thing. I'm someone who's always overpromising things, and I'm trying to become someone who doesn't overpromise things, but I'm also someone who likes to keep my promises. So if I have overpromised anything to anyone here, please reach out to me with that, and we can work that into a future version, because as I said, I want to hold those promises. We are always trying to serve you guys the best that we possibly can. So we'll jump now into the dashboard. You'll have to bear with me here. I got a whole bunch of Zoom stuff all over my screen. I got to move around. Okay. So this is what I call the main view. Within this main view on the left, we have a map that is controlled with these 7 different filters. In future versions, there will be an 8th filter to allow you to choose, different time points of data. But the version 1 for now is just this late 2024 data set. And then, next versions will have more data, of course, and it will necessitate the additional filter for choosing the date. It's purple. I know I don't really like the purple. I think people probably don't like the purple. I don't know if they like the purple, but it provides really good visual clarity of the purple. So you can see, the dark areas very well. You can see the light areas very well. In future iterations, I'm looking at using a Vertus color scale. I'm not sure if anyone knows the Vertus color scale, but it's very good for this sort of thing, and it'll make this not just look like a big purple blob, which will be nice. And then on the right here, we have our core indicators. So this is to give you the ability to see the census data, the CMHC data, and the public listings data, just all in one glance with whatever room types you would like. You'll notice here that there's some blanks within this. So this is because this room category, it doesn't exist for the census or for CMHC right now. They might add this in the future. That's why I say right now, but it is not in there right now. And this is getting at, when someone is just renting a room within a dwelling, which is a whole different experience than if you're renting, your own private, part of the house where it's only going to be you and only you have access. So we wanted to try to get at that the best that we could. There's still some work that needs to be done on that category because it can be hard to determine, what listings are rooms and what listings aren't rooms, because it's within, the landlord's best interest to always display these public listings as, valuable, as attractive as they possibly can to tenants. So there's some sort of, there's a bit of bias there. So instead of explicitly saying that this is just a room in a house for rent, they might say, oh, this is a basement apartment or something, but you don't know just from the listing alone that you're going to be sharing that space. So it can be hard to get those things out. And then this blank here is because the CMHC data, we only get it up to the 3+ level. So it goes studio 1 to 3+, and then all, of course. So that's why for CMHC, we don't have a 4+ and we don't have a 3. For our public listings, and then the census, of course, doesn't have the 3+ as well. And the public listings doesn't have the 3+, but in our future version, we're going to add the 3+. This was, a bit of an oversight by me because I figured, this is, I'm matching the census. That's great. The census is incredible. But because this sort of CMHC sort of threw a wrench in here, I realized, I can generate these 3+ bedroom data points for the public listings because I have access to the disaggregated data. So we're going to look at doing that for a future version, just to allow more comparability between CMHC. Yeah, so we have a little hover icon here, which just goes over the core indicators. Nothing too exciting there. It goes over the notes I just made about the different bedroom types. Let's spend a bit more time now looking at the map. So as you can see, we have lots of different levels of geography. It can be hard sometimes when you get into things like the census subdivision or census tract level to really see anything on the map because, census tracts, they only exist for large population areas, which have associated CMAs or CAs. So as you can see, that doesn't cover a lot of Canada. It really hits Southern Ontario because that's where a lot of people live, but then other parts, it can be very sparse. So if you're looking at things like, census subdivisions or census metropolitan areas or census tracts, it's good to filter down, let's say first to the province. So we go to Ontario. And if this ever happens where you're playing around with the filters and, the map doesn't zoom in the way that you want it to, it's because the map has been pinned. So you just have to come to this icon here and you click that and then it'll snap its way into the location. Yes, and then once you've done this, you can then go to this list, which will now be filtered to just the CMAs within Ontario. Or if you have CD or CSD chosen, this will just be the CDs within Ontario. So if we go back to CMAs, and then we choose somewhere such as, Toronto, just because I know it's a very densely populated area, so they're going to have tons of listing data. So it's a good example to use here. So now I have Toronto and I can click Toronto to update these charts and things on the right. I could choose, these different indicators to change the charts here, or I could just hover to get all this information. But then if I wanted to, look at the census tracts within Toronto, it would be very hard to go through the list of all the census tracts that are in here and like track them all down and things. So now all I need to do, now that I have Toronto selected in the CMA here, is that I can switch this then to census tract, and you'll see I've already got all of Toronto here with all these different census tracts filtered down to here, which is great now because you can go in, you can find based off the base map these various areas to look at, certain neighborhoods and things. Yeah, and then if you wanted to compare these different census tracts, we'll actually see that on the next page in the comparison view. This map is really about pinpointing single locations to get the information on a single location just at once. And then the comparison view will be about getting, multiple locations to compare them, of course. So I'm going to switch this back to, let's just go census division. This is another great example. You'll see my map completely disappeared. My color bar says null. What's going on? If this ever happens to you in Tableau, this is because the selection that we just made resulted in there being no data available for the map. And that's because we have CMA Toronto selected, right? And logically, it doesn't make sense for a CMA to exist within a census division, right? Because they're different levels of geography. So we just have to click here then and go to all, and you'll see it comes back. And then again, if map view does not go to what you expected, you can go here and reset the map, and then you'll see we just have Ontario. And we can go to the whole country. We'll click into somewhere. Let's click into Squamish. Okay, then as I was saying, you can also change the indicators here. So if you want to know, where are most of the listings coming from for census divisions, you could go to count, and we can see like, wow, okay, division number 11 and division number 6, they actually have quite a few listings, right? Like you can just visually see that. A lot of these are getting lost because, the scale here, there's a few heavy hitters, right, down in here, but then the majority of places are going to exist more in this part. So that's why the majority of the map ends up quite white. Again, I'm hoping to fix this visual clarity more with a different color scale in the future iteration. But if we scroll in here, we can see, Southern Ontario, the density of the different listings. And then we can look at things like average rent or median rent to, again, change the colors within the map so that you can get an idea visually of where the more intense areas are. And likewise, the charts on the side will change as well. You can see for most of these, or for a lot of these areas, there's not very many public listings. Okay, so that is, yeah, okay, yeah. Click into Bruce by accident. So let's click on Toronto just because I know they have tons of data. And this will give you a good idea. So we can see with the census how they have, 500,000 listings. Like it is so comprehensive, such a huge, strong data point with tons of confidence. And then CMHC, again, tons of confidence. And then these public listings, I would say this is great. This is probably going to be very, very accurate with 400 here. Even with 85 here is probably going to be really good. Because like I was saying, it's really just when you have very few, like below 5 counts, where things get really skewed, but you could still have, 10 listings, 15 listings where they're being skewed by, a couple large numbers. But it could also be that those are real large numbers, right? There could be very expensive places, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a question about this, I think it's map, asking that for the shading of number of listing, could you try normalizing by area? So you basically get the listing density instead of a straight listing. That might be visually helpful for larger vs a smaller area. Maybe that's a suggestion.
Like they mean a physical geographic area? So like listings per 10 square kilometers sort of deal?
Graham, if you would like to
Hi.
turn on your mic.
Thanks very much. Yeah, that's what I mean. So listings per hectare or listing per kilometer, per square kilometer. I find on other maps, shaded maps, if you're comparing like medians, it's fairly easy. But when you start comparing like counts and you have wildly different like areas, like orders of magnitudes different, it starts to make less and less like visual sense and be less legible.
No, that's a great idea. Yeah. Thank you for that, Graham. And I remember from Thunder Bay your presentation. It was incredible. So I'm very thankful for you being here to provide those insights. I appreciate it. So something that I think is really cool is when you go average rent or you go median rent, and then you look at the census and you look at the public listings for areas that have high amount of listings, so good quality data for the public listings. you can see that these trends within the public listings and the trends within the census very much align. So that is to say, 3 bedrooms are more expensive than 2 bedrooms, or more expensive than 1 bedroom sort of deal. And it just helps to give more credibility, I feel, to these values because they follow the same trends as the very, very established data sets, right? So now if we scroll, well, first I'll show you here. So here you can just remove any different bars that you don't care to display for whatever your analysis may be. It can be helpful if you don't want to show these blanks within here. So you could get rid of the things like the 3+ and the room. But then for CMHC, you'd have to also get rid of the 4+ and the 3, right? But studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms as well. If we go to the count instead, hopefully this, yeah. So as we can imagine, and this sort of aligns with, our logical, rational thinking of the situation. Things like 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms are a lot more common than 3 bedrooms. And then again, much more common than 4+ bedrooms. And that just has to do with the fact that there are less, 4+ person families or 4+ person households that, require that sort of dwelling. And then there's going to be a lot of people who require things like a 1 bedroom or a 2 bedroom. My wife and I, we live in a 1 bedroom, so we would fall in there, even though, we're 2 people, we still only have the 1 bedroom need. So this is sort of just where the highest demand is in general for rentals. So that's an interesting thing to consider. If we scroll down, so this area is what we call the supplementary indicators. So this is just giving more detail to the public listings data because that's, the main attraction of this. But then also trying to present a few other key data points that can help to like, ground yourself in this local area, help to compare these rentals to things. So for example, we'll come back to this table again later after I go over this table. But for example, knowing the tenure by bedroom from the census in 2021, so the distribution of the bedrooms, this is like, in my mind, pretty sticky, which is to say, since 2021, they probably haven't, this ratio probably hasn't changed very much. So this ratio is probably still quite strong. And this also shows the owners and the renters, which, is very important because if you have an area, let's say with very, very, very high rents, but you don't actually have any renters, then it's not, it's not as big of a concern as if the rents were very, very high and the amount of renters was also very, very large, right? Yeah, so these are to give sort of comparables. But back to this details one here. If we highlight here, there's a note here that's important to just keep in the back of your mind. And that's that this data that runs this table here is slightly different than the data that runs this table here. This data has a few less data points in it, and that is because there are some listings where the dwelling type was never put, or an inappropriate dwelling type was put, something to that effect, where they still have really good rental data, but then they, for whatever reason, didn't list the dwelling type. So because this table here disaggregates this by these different dwelling types, it requires there to be a dwelling type, of course, whereas with this table here, where we're only concerned about the prices and the counts, or sorry, the rents and the counts, we can keep those data points within this because they don't need to be disaggregated out. So you'll see here the dwelling types that we have available. And again, you can customize these charts just to show what is relevant for your analysis. The dwelling types we have available here are apartment, basement, condo, duplex, triplex, house, and townhouse. And again, it's important to always remember that this is user-generated data. So what somebody considers a condo and somebody else considers an apartment, those may be the same thing. What someone considers a basement, someone else might consider a house. What someone considers a house, someone else might consider a townhouse. Like these are just landlords trying to put the listing they believe will drive, the most attention and get a tenant into the building. It's not necessarily the ground truth, but I believe that overall it tends towards being, the actual situation, right? Yeah, so you can also customize the number of bedrooms. You can hover over these different areas, just get, all the information at once. It can be kind of nauseating to see it all, but it's also nice not to have to click through all of these various menus just to get the different numbers. Like, if I saw this value here, but then I was like, well, is this really a strong point? Like, what's the count? And I see, oh, okay, 711 is the count. I guess that is, a pretty strong point then. Well, actually, that's an extremely strong point, but that's the line of thinking there for having these things easily available within the hover menu. And then again, I try to do my best to keep this color coordinating just so that it's easier in your mind. Like, you can see the blue is census, the red is CMHC, the orange is the public listings. Just, adding these little specs to make it so that the user experience feels more intuitive, and so you don't lose track of, the sort of your thoughts, right? You just don't want to lose track of your thoughts. So those are just little conveniences there. Yeah, and we can switch to, we can also look at the sizes of the dwellings here. So this is just an additional detail that goes beyond what's available from the core indicators. Sizes are not made available for this room, room target again, because it seems like, well, I know from the analysis when we did it that the numbers just do not align with this trend. Like, you would expect the room to be quite small, probably, the same size as a studio or the same size as a 1-bedroom, when in actuality, we were seeing that the size was coming out to be between the 2-bedroom and the 3-bedroom. And that's mainly because when people are talking about, or rather when landlords are trying to just rent out a room, they're, probably not going to go into that specific room and measure out the square footage of that room. And if they did, they probably don't want to put that, you're going to be renting a 100 square foot room or 150 square foot room or whatever it may be. They would much rather say, like, okay, this is a 2-bedroom apartment that's 2,000 square feet and you'll get a room in it, right? So because it's hard to deal with that user generated bias and deal with, just these unknowns around the room, we chose to not display that value just because we did not feel that it was accurate enough to represent it. Yeah, but these other fields, they look great. They have some good data attached to them, and these trends align with, the understanding that we would have, such as houses being larger or less number of bedrooms being smaller, right? Yeah, so that's pretty much that table there. So this table here I briefly talked about. This is the distribution of tenure by bedrooms. So this is to look at if you have, a high proportion of renters in your area or a high proportion of owners in your area, because, obviously the rental listings doesn't really get at that, and it is important for contextualizing your area to know just how many renters there are, just how many owners there are. Likewise with this chart here that shows the monthly after-tax income of households by tenure. It's also important to remember, the large difference between incomes of these two groups. So if you have, a very large proportion of renters who have very low monthly after-tax income, then it's going to be, a huge housing problem there, whereas the converse would not be true, right? And then we also have this all category here. We can see the by using this this clicker here. This also sort of speaks to, the situation within the dwelling. So with owners, this is typically going to be, 2-person household incomes, whereas renters are more so going to be 1-person household income. Because, renters are younger, typically, they're less established, they haven't started families, sort of thing. This is just, the overall sort of trends. In future versions, sorry if you guys can hear this siren in the background, I got something going on over there. In future iterations of this dashboard, this will be broken out into 1-person household and 2+ person household, and then, total person household, just so that, it becomes even easier to get that sort of context of, are these one-person households, two-person households, sort of deal. This chart over here from the CMHC, we are describing the vacancy and turnover rates as well as the reliability scores. In this version of the dashboard, this is just shown for the all category because that is where the majority of the data is in, you know, the main bucket. And then as you disaggregate things, you start to lose, you know, that data due to confidentiality and just due to not having as many samples. So for this iteration of the dashboard, this is just looking at the all category. You'll see for this one, even though we're looking at Toronto Census Division, which is huge, they still, for whatever reason, do not have a turnover rate or a reliability score associated with them. In future iterations of this dashboard in the version 2 that we're working on right now, this is broken out by bedroom type as well, because, you know, we've got this broken out by bedroom type, this broken out by bedroom type. We might as well also break this out by bedroom type, and then of course still produce the, like, show the all metric, right? So just trying to show as much data as we possibly can. That was actually a bit of the trouble we ran into before releasing this version, was that, you know, I was really pushing. I really, really wanted to get you guys just as much data as I possibly could fit into this. But I reached the limit of my own Tableau skills, and I just couldn't get it to you guys in time, but it is still in the works. I've reached my plateau and surpassed it. So the problems I was facing are behind me now, and we're looking very bright towards the future with lots of data. So I'm very excited for that. But we'll just switch this view quickly just so that we can see what it looks like when there is a turnover rate. So I believe if we go to national, this should have something. Yeah, there we go. So here we can now see that there are 2 bars. So the vacancy rate here in red, and then the turnover rate here in pink. Their associated reliability scores will pop up to the right of them if they're available. And then in this information blurb, it just talks about the definition of turnover rate, talks about the definition of vacancy rate, and then the reliability scores. Likewise, if you hover over, you know, the Census 2021 supplementary indicator information, it's going to tell you about the after-tax income. It's going to tell you about tenure. And then this one is just warning you about the different biases and things within the public listings data. So we'll jump into the comparison view now. So you'll see that this has a map, which is similar to the other one, but it's different, right? Because this map is only, the colors right now are only being used to display the province that these places fall into. And really the only reason this map here exists is so that you can click to highlight either bars or, well, it's bars and the dots within the 2 charts. You guys look at this for a second. I'm just going to take a quick sip of water.
Actually, August, you don't have to do it right now, but one of the questions might be helpful for everyone to have an answer, which is where do we find this product on the website?
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we can go over that. I'll go over that when I go over the data sources page, because there'll be some links there that I can click into to get to the website, and then I'll show you guys how to get to this dashboard from the landing page of the website as well. So if we hop back into the dashboard here, as I was saying, the coloring is just based off of province right now. Something I want to look at in the future is making this coloring more meaningful. When you're doing coloring with this and you have so many different categories, there's only so many colors that, you know, are really unique to the eye. So even here, you'll see like Alberta, British Columbia, Ontario, Prince Edward Island, like these are still different shades of blue, which can be hard to visually discern. So once you start getting a lot of members like this, it can be very hard to have unique coloring for all of them. And then if you lose that unique coloring, it kind of, you know, defeats the purpose of doing this in the first place. So what I want to look into for version 2 is that, you know, let's say right now we have this coloring here, but if we were to click into a single province, so let's say Ontario, then maybe the coloring is like a cluster of census divisions or something, or maybe you know, maybe it's still this coloring where you just have Ontario, but then if you, whenever like the members within the grouping that you have selected gets down to, let's say, you know, 10. So if you're only looking at, you know, 10, so like if I clicked 1, 2, so you can control click to do multiple clicks. So let's say I clicked a few of these, right? Then we would get the coloring differences to be like this selection, right? Where it's only a few members that are being color coded. And then this would then be reflected over here. just so that like you don't have to. So for example, with Kenora, like Kenora's here, if this then got, you know, dynamically color changed, then I would know the associated value down here just by looking. Whereas now I have to, you know, I have to hover over them to find Kenora, and I see Kenora's here. Of course, you could always just click Kenora, just get the single one. But yeah, just trying to get more meaning out of these colors here. Sorry, I went on a huge tangent there. Back to the main page. So yeah, as I was showing with the functionality, you can do these multi-click selects to try to find you know, the areas that you want to compare. You're probably not just going to be clicking all randomly across the country, but you can do that. It's certainly fun. If you look at this table, when you're hovering over these headings here, this is an important sort of Tableau general tip. Usually when you're viewing things in Tableau Reader, there's like inherent functionality built within Tableau Reader that allows you to do you know, these same sort of actions on any chart that you encounter. So this is one of them where with these headers, if you hover over, you'll see these bars with this line, and this is just allowing you to change the sorting. So right now this is sorting by average rent from highest to lowest for the public listings 2024. But then you can also, you know, sort by the CMHC instead if you'd like, or you can sort by, you know, Census 2021. So if I wanted to highlight, let's say, the most expensive places in Canada, then I could just, you know, click these first 5 bars, and then here are my 5 most expensive places in Canada according to the public listings data. So that's why these dots here are, you know, highlighted, and then we can see how those fall here, and we can see like this place in Quebec, where the Census and CMHC, they say that it's you know, very low rent, especially compared to everyone else. But then our data set says that it's actually very high rent, right? So it's interesting to try to work these things out for your specific locality, right? And sort of get an idea of how these things have changed over time. Like maybe this area in Quebec has become much more attractive from a tourism point of view, or something to that effect in the past 5 years that has really drove up the price, right? These are just the sort of questions that you can start to answer. But really this comparison shines through with census tracts, because you really need like a map and things to be able to understand those values, right? So I'm going to use my local geography as an example of the sort of analysis you know, that I can imagine people doing. So I live in Guelph, Ontario. So if I go to Census Division, I know that this is the Wellington Census Division. Or sorry, I'm going to put that into this one here. So I'll go Wellington. Oh, and I actually want to look at CMA, right? Because we're going to go to census tracts. So my CMA is actually just Guelph. So we'll go to the CMA of Guelph. Oh, this is something that's important to remember as well, which I oftentimes forget, as I just did. When all these items are selected and then you just want to select one, you really need to deselect everything first and then type in the one place that you're interested in and select that. And then, of course, if you want to select you know, additional places, you could do that. I believe, yeah, Center Wellington should be close by. Yeah, it's a neighboring place. So as you can see, we now have these 2 neighboring CMAs. So this would be a situation, like I was saying, with that dynamic coloring, that I feel would be very strong if these were, you know, colored differently, because there's just 2 items now. And we're going to look at something like that for the future versions. So yeah, this isn't very interesting. It's just got these 2 points here. You'll notice that these medians pop up on these charts as well. There's actually lines within these bar charts as well, and these are displaying the same medians. These 2 visuals here, they display all the same data, exact same. It's just 2 different ways of visualizing the exact same data. And this bottom one allows you to see, you know, all the points at once without having to scroll if there's too many members. So now that I have these 2 CMAs selected, I'm then going to go to census tracts. And you can see that example now. There's all these members that you got to scroll through, and you know, it's hard to hold in your mind the different arrangement of these 3 different charts for Census, CMHC, and public listing. But then this bubble chart at the bottom here, as they call them, bubble charts, it helps so that it's single one glance without having to scroll around or anything. You can get things like the maximum of each group, the minimum of each group, the median, and then sort of get the distribution as well, right? So like we can see with the CMHC and the census data that there's this very you know, far away part where this census tract, for whatever reason, is much more expensive than these other ones, but that is not reflected within the public list, or sorry, and it is also quite an expensive one within the public listings as well. So that's interesting, because like I was saying, now that you have this here, I could click onto this and now I can see, oh, these are actually two different places. Excuse me. I'd assume that the 23 and 23 was the same place, but it is not. It is not at all, right? But let's say I'm interested in the most expensive place from each of these different sources. I could click on the census point at the very right. Then I can control click at the CMHC point to the very right. And then I can control click at the public listings point at the very farthest point to the right, right? And then this is saying now with the median that it's 1,700 from the census, 2,300 from the CMHC, and 2,534 from the public listings. It's also important to remember with this median that this is a median of these displayed values, right? It's not a true median. It is a median of the displayed values or a median of the grouped values, which means that it is a median of the average rents or a median of the median rents or a median of the counts, right? Which is a little bit confusing to wrap your head around, but very, I don't know, once you wrap your head around it, it's not too bad, right? So if we scroll into here, we can now see things like, okay, it seems like near the university, which is 1.08, and then I can, you know, look at here. Okay, the census 2021 said that 1.08 was the most expensive, so right by the university. This is also, I know from living here, a retirement community. So I'd imagine that, you know, retirement communities, they have lots of disposable income. That could be what's driving up these high prices. Me personally, I just started renting a new place. So, you know, it's a fun tool as well as a renter. That is not the point though. The point is, of course, for policymakers and things, but it does end up being a fun tool, of course, to play around with. So if we scroll down here, I actually live, let's see. I don't know, I live right here, I think, right there, right? And I'm in a 1-bedroom. It's not a studio, so 1 bedroom. So I got that going for me. And they're saying that for a 1-bedroom, sorry, I got my Zoom menu cutting off, I should be paying $1,764 average rent of these 28 counts. I pay more than that, so I'm a bit disappointed there, right? Because I can see that my neighbors in my same census tract, you know, they're paying less than me. But at the same time, it makes sense because I live in one of the only apartment buildings on our block, and the rest of the people are all within, you know, more residential houses, which will typically have, you know, lower rents for a 1-bedroom because, you know, it's not really a 1-bedroom house. It's 1 bedroom that you're getting within a house, right? But they still list it as 1 bedroom. And then this is, again, the difficulties with these rooms and these 1 bedrooms and the 2 bedrooms sort of thing, right? Yeah.
We have a question about the dwelling type.
Yeah.
In the categories of dwelling type, there is apartment and condo. I assume apartment refers to purpose-built rental buildings. How do you assess whether a single apartment listing is in a rental or a condo building?
Yeah, so that's a great question that sort of gets at the core of this data, right? So for things like apartment and condo, I'm not making any sort of decisions as to what is an apartment, what is a condo, what is any of these things, except for the room category. I'm involved with the room category because we do like a bit of machine learning. It's not really machine learning, but you know, we have a bit of sophistication behind that with some pattern recognition to try to figure out these single room, you know, dwellings, as we call them, when really it's a bedroom type, these single rooms within these places. And that's why if we go to average rent, you'll see this is only showing up for all because, you know, it's not actually a dwelling type. It's just a room that could be falling under any of these categories. But these categories with apartment, basement, condo, these are what the listings put, right? So if somebody said that their place was an apartment and that's what got into the listing, then that is what ended up here. So really, if you're interested, I encourage you to look at the websites such as, you know, Kijiji, Zoomper, Rentboard, to look at what people are putting as apartments, what people are putting as basements. But typically apartments, this is what I've seen from these public listings. typically the apartments end up being purpose-built rentals. Well, they're kind of, the apartment category kind of ends up being a mixture of both primary market rentals and secondary market rentals, whereas condos end up being like very much primary market rental. Like a condo is almost always like purpose-built to be a rental or to be someone's, you know, house or something like that where they're going to live. It's very, very much purpose-built, whereas something like an apartment could be like someone's converted, you know, converted something into an apartment. It could be a basement apartment and they chose apartment instead of basement, right? So yeah, it really gets at like the core of the data because it's very much the listing data, right? So the listing said that it was a 1-bedroom in an apartment for this rent, and that's the data point that went into it, right? Yeah, so I hope that answered the question and did not make things more confusing.
Thank you.
But yeah, we can, I mean, we can open up to any, sorry, let me go over the data sources quickly. So people have been asking of where to find the dashboard. So obviously this isn't going to be helpful because this is within the dashboard, but I'm going to quickly use the link within the dashboard just to get to the web browser here. Actually, this is my wrong web browser. A different web browser. Okay, hold on. Here we go. All right, can you see the web browser?
Yes.
Might look a bit different than yours, than you guys, because I have the admin powers, right? So this is the landing page that you're going to see when you're logged in. If you're logged out, you'll still be able to find this product, but you won't actually be able to download it until you log in because, you know, these are just for our members. So if I click find data, right now it's going to be easy to find these because they were just recently released in June. So if I scroll down here, immediately I can see, you know, dashboard, community rental housing affordability version 1. So that's the dashboard that we had just seen. And then here is the data set. So this is the data set just for the public listings data. And then within the dashboard, well, within either of these files that you download, you'll also get this guide here that accompanies with them. And within this guide, you can then scroll down to learn, you know, about the specific sources. So things like average rent / average shelter cost from the census, those are coming specifically from this CDP data product. So then you could go into here and download this for your analysis. So in the future, when there's much more things, if you want to find dashboards in particular, you can go up to our portals here and you can go to infographics and dashboards portal. And then this will give you a bit of a blurb about the required software. So Tableau Reader, how you can install it, some instructions there. And then we have this tab here where you can get to the different categories of the dashboard. So this one would fall under housing and affordability, of course. So if we click here, this is going to take us down and then we can see we have the community rental housing affordability dashboard. And then you can click here or you can click on the image to be brought to the page. And then if I log in and I go back, refresh, you'll now see that this add to cart button is not grayed out. It was grayed out before I had logged in. So what you're going to do is you're going to click this add to cart button. And then you can go to checkout, complete checkout. And then this will send you an email saying that, you know, the checkout went through. And then to download the file, you're just going to click here. And then that'll download the zip file, which will contain the dashboard and the guide. And then if this was the data set, this would instead get the data set and the guide. Just trying to always make sure that people have the guide, right? And likewise, because, you know, all these products are connected, if you're at the dashboard and you scroll down a bit, you can click this link to go to the data set. And then if you're in the data set, you can scroll down a bit, or you should be able to. I will add, oh yeah, you can click here to go back to the dashboard. Yeah. Yeah, so let me head back into that data sources and notes page. Here we are. I'm actually going to start on the right side just because I can go over this very quickly. So on this right side here in orange, so that it is very apparent for people, we go over a lot of the different limitations of the public rental listings data. I still think that it's extremely strong data in my opinion. And I think that, you know, as a comparable considering the traditional data sources, it, you know, blows those out of the water because it's actually relevant, even if it does have, you know, these sort of caveats attached to it. So those are going to be things like it's a subset of the rental universe. This is not every single rental ever that's available. These are, you know, snapshots in time, and we're trying to get as much as we can, but no matter what, it won't be the whole rental universe, like something like the census would provide. There could be sampling errors. So this is if there's very low counts, then numbers could be skewed. There could be listing bias, and this is going to be where the landlord is, you know, biasing their listing just to make it more attractive to possible tenants, but they're not actually giving, you know, the real situation. You know, like maybe they add 100 square feet, or maybe they said that it was cheaper, but then when the guy got there, they told him, yeah, it was actually more, blah, blah, blah. Those sorts of things, right? Duplicate listings may exist despite best cleaning efforts. The prices are asking rent. There's no verification of if that's the actual rent that things were rented for. I mean, I know from my personal experience that the rents that I have paid have always reflected the rents that have been on these listings websites, but I know that that is not always the case. And then there's also just the short-term volatility aspect. So if you think about a place that has a very low population, those listings, they might, you know, pop up, then be gone, then pop up, then be gone. So it's very hard with places without many people to get, you know, good data that is consistent. So if we look at this left here, we have some data sources and notes. So this is just giving you a very, you know, quick overview of the 3 different sources, things like a description, the frequency, the purpose, the key variables, and then each of these has links that go to our, there's one link that goes to the documentation. So this is going to be the documentation for CMHC, where if we click into this one, you know, so we had that question earlier, if it was about, you know, asking rents or pay, or like the rents that people are paying or the rents that are being asked for. And then we see here they collect market rent levels. And if you scroll through here, average rent, this represents rents levels in both new and existing structures. This is a weighted average of all units combined, whether vacant or occupied. So yeah, vacant or occupied, that does sound like asking rent to me. I will say they make this pretty confusing at times. Yeah, but this documentation is here. And then, sorry, I clicked into the wrong tab. Likewise, there's a link here that goes to the, you know, the census, the big guide that will talk about things like shelter cost, what is or isn't included in shelter costs, how those numbers should be interpreted, you know, all the limitations that are behind those numbers. And some of that, the relevant stuff is also within the guide that is provided in those file packages. Yeah, and then I think I'll switch back quickly to the slide deck from the beginning, if I can find it. Hold on, let me stop staring for a second. Oh, okay, here we go. It's right in front of me. Go to slideshow. So there's some questions that we would like to ask you guys as well. And, you know, obviously you guys are free to ask me any questions. Please grill me. I will do my best to answer anything. But the sort of questions that we need feedback on from you guys is, you know, how do you see yourself using the dashboard or data set? Me personally, I'm very much like a data analyst sort of guy, obviously, but my background is in physics and then in analytics, like very core science and not so much, you know, tailored necessarily to these more social problems. And I'm still very much learning, and I love learning these things. It's such a complex field, right? But I need the domain knowledge from experts such as yourself of how, you know, you're actually going to be using this to drive policy change within your local areas, or to, you know, change local mandate or whatever it may be. I am admittedly sort of ignorant to that process, and I need to learn more. So that's why we're asking this question, right? Because you know, it's all about understanding you guys as the audience to try to provide you guys the best experience. To go into questions 2 and 3, which are sort of, you know, related, is how frequently should we collect data? I'm a self-professed data hoarder. I love collecting data. I love hoarding it. I love collecting as much as I possibly can, to a fault at times. And something that we have to remember here at the CDP is that, you know, we're always trying to keep our costs as low as possible and provide, as much value as we possibly can. And, it's up to you guys to tell us what has value, right? So like we were thinking, I believe in our guide, we were saying trimesterly data releases because we were thinking, monthly, month to month, things don't change very much. And really policy and things such as that, they just need these bigger time frames, right? Like the gap to the census is massive, but if we had an up-to-date, 6 months, 4 months, you guys provide us feedback. But right now we're looking at updating this trimesterly, which will be 3 times a year, I believe is what it is. So 4 months of data in each of the packages, hopefully, or data from within those 4 months. It's all open to your comments so that we can determine this balance between the time that we spend and the value that we provide for you guys, right? Because it is really about the value at the end of the day, and maybe monthly measures doesn't have value, or maybe it does have value. Maybe 6 months isn't long enough, but 4 months is good. So please let us know. And then also if you have any other sources. So right now we are collecting, the first we did was Kijiji, because that's the one that I know. It's massive. We get tons of data from there. It's great. They don't make it too difficult to set up these sort of things. And then we also have Rentboard and Zoomper, which have a bit less data right now because the first one was Kijiji. But we're in the process of collecting more data for them. And then we also want to touch on, other places, especially local places that you may know. I'll get to your question in 1 second, Alan. I see your hand. The last thing that I wanted to say on that, oh man, I might have forgot. Hold on. All right, we'll take the question, Alan.
Thanks.
Yeah.
In terms of frequency, I won't pretend to be a complete housing expert, but I work in human services or housing services at the Region of Peel. So we tend to deal with obviously subsidized housing, but the inability of people to get affordable housing can also have knock-on effects, right, in terms of that. So, my thought would be in terms of timing is if you could get like maybe trimesterally is good or quarterly. I think definitely there's value of having a sense of trending over time. So my question is, when you talk about updating it quarterly, does that mean you're replacing all of the data with a new quarter, or you're actually going to have the ability to, I can look at trimester 3, 2024 and compare it to trimester 3, 2025 as an example? Because some dashboards I find get built and they only have a snapshot in time. They don't give you the life cycle or the time series trend perspective.
Yeah, totally. No, I agree completely that that's an aspect that's often lost. It's also like, I think the sad part about that too is that lots of people have very ambitious projects. And then once all the hype dies down, it's released, it starts to fade away. So what happened with this project actually is that I wanted to provide 2 time points right off the bat, but as I was saying, I hit the ceiling with my Tableau skills and it just did not work out. But the plan for the future, yes, is to provide those additional time points so that you can look at things such as that, where you're seeing the change over the trimesterly periods. And I think to that effect as well, we will likely introduce a third tab into this dashboard where you can do a comparison through time. I had a fancy name for it before, but let's just say time view or something, right? Timeline view. Yeah, so that's on the horizon, and yeah, we want to be able to enable that sort of work. Yeah, Aaron.
Hi, August. Thank you so much for such an awesome presentation. I haven't been able to actually access the dashboard. I don't have Tableau, but I think I can connect with my IT department to see about getting it. So really thorough overview. It's super appreciated. Without having access to the guide for some of the technical details, just a couple of questions. And I guess I'll start off by saying too, I'm a member of the Ontario Dietitians in Public Health, and I just wanted to share with the group. I think there's a couple people on here from municipal departments or public health departments. So across Ontario, local public health agencies monitor food affordability, and we do that by crafting a variety of income household scenarios and looking at local rent rates to understand how those compare with regional food costs and contextualize it for food affordability that way. We typically use the CMHC data, but it's not available for all communities in the smaller areas. So that's a challenge for sure. So we have lots of discussion about the best rental sources what we should be using. Also, as we know, like the CMHC data appears to, like it does, underrepresent the rental costs if you were looking for housing now, right? Because it's an of. So that's often comes under scrutiny with the reporting that we do. So health units are looking for creative ways to sort of collect the data that you've already done in terms of looking at the public listings. So I'm just kind of like, oh gosh, we just started a project like this locally, but you've done so much of the legwork. So this is amazing. One of my questions is with regards to exclusion criteria and like the data cleaning. So I don't have a ton of experience with web scraping, of course, and then the data cleaning process. Like, so for example, our area we're kind of on the southern end of Northern Ontario and includes cottage country, so North Bay, Nipissing, Parry Sound districts. So in our exclusion criteria, particularly for the Parry Sound area, we're looking at like, okay, no cottage rentals. So as we're looking at, rental units and also like kind of within the geographic area of the town, right? So no waterfront. So, just those local nuances that, staff from local agencies would be aware of, acknowledging your project is a national project. Like there's no way you can sort of like build that in for every community. So yeah, just thinking about the utility at the local level and how we can be meaningfully utilizing the work that you're doing and not duplicate if we don't need to, but also make sure it suits our needs and accurately represents what the public listings are.
Yeah, that's something that I've heard a lot as far as, vacation rentals and things and trying to filter those out. It can be difficult for sure. Hopefully over time, when we have, trimesterly data, there may be, certain trimesters that are more associated with those vacation rentals. So just, random example of my head, but if you're in a very big skiing area, if it's the skiing season, then maybe that data you would just not consider because you'd be like, this is not actually representative. This is just the skiers or whatever. But especially in Northern Ontario, I've heard this need of knowing, what's a vacation rental versus what's an actual rental. Who's actually living here versus who's just coming for a little bit. And we are, talking about that and trying to figure that out. It becomes very difficult, because of the user-generated aspects of it. But another very interesting part of this project is because of all these different, public sources that aren't under our control, aren't under, anyone's control but their own. They don't communicate with each other, blah, blah, blah. They can just update their website, right, to change things, which can break the code or make the code run better at times. But something that Kijiji added very recently was a separate category for vacation rentals. So we're going to be looking at, how can we, make best use of that data. It's not as structured right now as their typical rental data. It's sort of just an unstructured, like just selling something sort of thing. But I'm sure as they update this new area of their website, they'll structure it more. They were also showing short-term rentals, and a project we had done in the past was looking at Airbnb data for short-term rentals, which is very interesting, right? There are some places in Ontario, the one that I can remember is Tiny, where they have tons of rentals, but they're all Airbnbs, right? Where it's just you're going to Tiny for a weekend, and the people who actually live there, they can't find rentals because they're all just these Airbnbs, right? So yeah, we're looking at trying to bring in vacation rentals, trying to bring in short-term rentals as much as we can. But yeah, as soon as you start adding, you know, that little bit more complexity where it's now vacation rental, it grows very large in complexity in that way. Just
Yeah.
because they don't have like a meaningful way yet for these people to be listing these rentals, but it seems they're working towards that, and we're going to do our best to work with what we can get. That's interesting to hear about the rent to the food cost. And I was wondering, so with this data as well, and this is again just open for discussion going into the future with this project, because when I have the data, it is point level data, right? Like I have a latitude, longitude point associated with most of these rentals. You know, it can be aggregated at any geography. These geographies that are chosen to be displayed in the dashboard, this is because those are the ones that, you know, the census operates on just as a standard. But if there's interest in things like health regions or custom geographies or things like that, you know, you guys could always reach out to us, and then we could figure out a way to help you fulfill that need. And then yeah, it's this sort of work, like I am not a proud person ever, but it takes a lot of hats to be able to do this, and it can be very hard for organizations to take this on and to have, like, you know, this national need where you nationally need, you know, someone in each of these places to be able to do things like, you know, understand a website structure, go into the backend code of the website to see how they are making requests to their server to get the data onto that web page. How are they structuring it on that web page? You know, and then writing the Python code to be able to, you know, work your way through the listings pages to collect the listings pages, and then go through all those listing pages to get all the data, and then clean all that data programmatically and bring it into, and then make a dashboard in Tableau, right? Like it's so many different moving parts that can be really hard for smaller places to be able to do this work, which is again part of the reason why we're trying to do this, you know, nationally, right? Because once one person has these systems set up, it's the difference of me leaving my computer running for, you know, half an hour or leaving it running overnight to finish the collection. So yeah, it's definitely a project that lends well to scaling, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. The last thing I'll add is we collect our food cost data annually in May. So we always try to align like our income scenarios and the rent rates with like the best data we have for that time period. So for the CMHC data, we use typically like the previous year's reporting from October. So, I mean, at a minimum annually, if you're doing it more frequently, that's outstanding. If it's manageable. So, yeah, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it.
How do you guys collect your food data?
We use the National Nutritious Food Basket survey
Okay, yeah.
tool,
Yeah.
and we do a mix of online and in-person manual costing still.
Yeah, because this is like you know, another avenue of exploration that we want to go down, but this might be, you know, quite a bit further down the line because we want to really, you know, make sure that this project is figured out.
Yeah.
But you know, we're talking about looking at other similar projects where we're collecting this publicly available data, right? So that would be
Yes.
in your example, we spoke very briefly as a team just about collecting, you know, food costs. Like, could we go to various different grocery store websites and, you know, set them to this locality and say, hey, this is how much, you know, like a bar of soap costs, this is how much an apple costs, this is how much X pounds of meat costs, sort of deal, right? Just so that, you know, let's say there's these 5 items. I guess that's similar to market basket, right? You get this basket of items. Here's how much it costs from these different grocery stores in these different localities, sort of deal.
Well,
So
and
yeah,
it really calls into question the accuracy of the market basket measure because there was some reporting out of Nova Scotia a couple of years ago using web scraping showing like the market basket measure estimates for food costs specifically really underestimated the food costs compared to the web scraping data that they were able to pull. So yeah, let's keep the conversation going and I'll let somebody else go. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
August, can I jump in? And
Yeah,
there is
of course.
something like I got a request from Michelle to share a poll with CTP members that how frequently you want to see the data updates, and that help us to kind of, you know, make a decision at the end and move forward with it. So I'm going to launch the kind of poll. It's annually, biannually, quarterly, or monthly. If you can respond to this.
And no trimesterly, that's our current one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just to give an
Okay.
indication of frequency.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's also a couple of questions at the 2:26 p.m. mark in the chat.
Oh,
that you
okay.
want to look at, August, while we're waiting for the poll
Yeah,
results to
let
come
me
in.
stop sharing. We've all seen those. Some good discussion in here. I'll have to go through this after.
Ultimately, the frequency for us will be somewhere between what people want and what we are capable of. And the question
Oh wow, your enterprise version is too old. That's so sad. I think it was made with it was either 2025.1 or 2025.2. It should work on either of those versions, but yeah, it was made on a newer version. It's interesting actually because they updated Tableau in 2025. I think it was the 0.1 or 0.2 that broke a couple of our dashboards, and I actually had to go back to fix them. It was really weird. Yeah, it sucks that they don't do the backwards compatibility. But on that note, and on the note of I believe it was Aaron who said that they didn't have access to Tableau. Tableau Reader is free, right? For like anyone. So if you wanted to download Tableau Reader on your personal computer, it is a very trusted program. It's free, like I said. So like you could very easily download Tableau Reader on your personal computer and view this in your personal time or during business time if your work allows you to use your personal computer, sort of deal, right? You guys have discretion. You know it's happening. Can you please confirm Census all rentals includes first? Yes, yeah, Sarah Cameron from York Region. Yeah, that's my understanding. So the census, it gets everything as much as it possibly can. So that's going to be, as you know, all those different things that you had listed, and then the CMHC is just that purpose-built rentals, where it's just if that purpose-built rental had like, 3 or more dwellings or something within it. And it's only within certain population bands as well. But if you click into the CMHC guide that's linked on that last page of the dashboard, it'll have more CMHC details. And we also link out to the census guide. But yeah, your general understanding there is correct. The one thing I will say with the rental, with the public listings, is that I actually have seen subsidized units get listed, but I do not think it is like at all common, right? Because as you said, those sorts of things are distributed through wait lists. And it really didn't make any sense to me because when I looked at it, like they didn't, like it's exactly what you said. It's not like anybody could just get it. Like you had to apply for the subsidized housing and blah, blah, blah. So I'm not sure why it's there. Yeah.
Okay, so the poll, I will share the result, but I will definitely having conversation with the team. So 55% mentioned that quarterly, that's something they want to see the data updates. And after that, the 23% said biannually.
This is really helpful. I mean, what it's clear on is the two polar ends are least of a priority.
Yeah.
And that a biannual would be a compromise.
Yeah, and the trimester aligns well with that already. But I mean, quarterly is good.
I do want to put in a pitch for, and we did get a couple of comments that support this request, which is we are looking for public rental listing sites that might be unique to a province or even a community. If it's digital and it's online, we can access it. So if you have anything that you'd like to share with us that you think might be too locally quirky, our only challenge will be to find commonality in the variables. But that's a challenge we're prepared to take on. So at any point, if there's a site that you think you'd like to share and you'd like to see it reflected in your community, we're prepared to consider it.
Yeah, and the problem is we can never make any promises with these things because it's always subject to how the website has been set up. There are some that are, like Fort Knox, and then there are others that are just, open streams, just letting it all out. So we'll do our best, but until we actually, get into the nitty-gritty, investigate how the website is structured, we won't know for sure, right? On that note, one that is always requested is Facebook Marketplace. I mean, Facebook Marketplace, incredible. So many people use it. It's directly linked to their personal life, so it's easy for them to engage with. The problem with Facebook Marketplace is that, Facebook, they're massive. They're a huge company, right? So much money, so much resources. They pioneered web development. So their data is very much locked down, and it's just not feasible for us to be able to collect it, really. Yeah. So because that's the dream one, right? But yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you, August, for the great presentation and the great ideas and questions and the suggestions in the chat box. Thank you, everyone, for engaging in this webinar. And I'm going to stop recording.